Hey guys, this is Nicole with Syndicate Family Clans, doing a video today on base layout and the tips that I have for your war base. In a moment here, I'll bring up my own personal war base and kind of go over some of these points. First being the asymmetrical design and the difficulty it is to plan an attack against these kinds of bases. Having a centralized clan castle, the harder it is to lure your clan castle troops, the more detrimental it is to an attacker. Double giant bomb locations and double giant bomb decoys, and the importance of both of these. Having your heroes internally located. When you have them more internally located, they're able to do more damage before they're being killed. Air defense locations and coverage, and then other traps and bomb locations, and the overall coverage of your other defense units. Okay, so let's go over the points that we talked about. I'm going to show you my clan or my war base here. First things, we're going to look at the symmetry of the base. If you notice, whether you go from the east and west or from the north and south, they're not the same on either side. And this is important because it makes the enemy have a harder time planning to coordinate their attack, to plan where these troops are going to move when it's not symmetrical. There are times when an asymmetrical base might work just fine, but typically speaking, an asymmetrical base is going to work better than a symmetrical base. Next, looking at the clan castle, if you can see I have the radius up here. In all areas, the radius falls before or on top of a defensive unit, meaning regardless of what direction they come from, they're gonna need, whether they use giants or balloons or hog riders, they're not going to be able to pull that clan castle. And it's very important that your clan castle is not able to be lured easily. That is one of your biggest defenses when it comes to a war attack. And if your clan castle is off to the side somewhere, they're able to use something really easy to pull it and drop a couple poison spells and take out whatever you have. Then your defense is going to feel that. I mean, your troops are there for a reason. And so if you have your clan castle centrally located and harder to pull, it betters your chances in defending against these attacks, especially when you have something like a dragon in there. If they're using a balloon raid or hog riders, and those troops that target your defensive units first, they're not going to target those clan castle troops, and they're just going to keep absorbing that damage from your clan castle before anything gets them taken out. Now I know at Town Hall 7 and below especially, sometimes Town Hall 8, it's really tricky and almost impossible to have a clan castle that's not able to be lured, and that's fine, make it as difficult as possible if you're able to. But for Town Hall 9 and above for sure, it is possible, and it is something you should try to do with your base design, is to make that clan castle as hard to lure as humanly possible. Don't have it off to the side. Don't have it, on one edge there. It's really important to get that inside so that those troops pop out and they have to do damage in the middle of the attack. Next, we're going to look at my double giant bombs. I have two locations right here and right here. And if you notice, they're between two defenses, meaning they have a defensive unit on each side. And the reason why you want them between two defenses is as hog riders move through the base, they go from one defensive unit to the next. They're going to cross over these double giant bombs, triggering both of them at the same time, versus if they were to come this direction, they're only going to trigger one and then the next. So try to have them between two defenses so that they actually have to move across both of them, triggering both of them. Even if a heal spell is dropped in this location, the double giant bombs are going to take out any hog riders in that location. Hogs are becoming one of the most popular attacks on Town Hall 9, so having double giant bomb locations is extremely important. You want to have them if at all possible. One single bomb is easy to recover from, but two of them it's not. When it comes to double giant bombs, what's just as important as actually having double giant bomb location is having double giant bomb decoy spots, meaning these are positions that are big enough to hold double giant bombs, but they aren't actually there. And so if you notice, I have several spots on my base with these decoy positions. And that means that when somebody is planning an attack to hit my base, they really don't know for sure where these double giant bombs are. Now they could send in a couple hogs into these areas and find that there's no bombs there. Sending hogs in all of these locations is only going to waste their troops. But when you have this many decoy spots, they're really not going to be sure. It's going to be a lot more difficult for them to plan a hog attack on this base, and maybe even something that they won't even do. You know, maybe they'll opt for a different type of raid because they can't plan to use hogs on this base as effectively. The other thing is my double giant bomb locations are here on the inside or the interior ring of the base. And the reason I have them on this interior line is because, like I said before, if I were to have them right here and they sent in hogs in this direction, they're going to be able to trip those double giant bombs. And the same with these other exterior locations. They're going to be able to trip them fairly easily. And then at that point, those bombs are gone and they're not going to do anything to actually stop the raid. Have your double giant bombs in a spot that isn't lurable or isn't able to be triggered with decoy hogs or test hogs. If you don't have a position like I do on the inside there, a position like this one right here would work as well. And the reason this works well, you know, obviously this Tesla and Springtrap won't be there, but there would be the two bombs. But it's behind a defense. So the hogs are going to go in. They're going to hit this archer tower. They're going to take aggro from these other defense units, but then they're going to probably go either to this cannon or to this expo. So at that point, they could trigger this way, but by then 1 or 2 or 3 hogs are going to be destroyed by these other defensive units. So honestly, this is a decent position for the double giant bombs if you don't have a more interior position. It's behind a defensive unit. They can't trigger it with 1 or 2 hogs. If they only send in 1 or 2 hogs, they're going to be destroyed before they can really move on too far. If they do send in their mass hogs, they would be triggered after the fact. So that kind of a position will work, but obviously a spot like this and this is a better option. The next thing to show you is the hero locations. It's a very centralized location. They're not off to the side. They're not easy to be killed. The beginning stages of an attack is when they have the most firepower. So if you can have them on an internal side, they've already started to lose some of their troops. They're starting to lose some of their firepower, and your troops are going to be able, or your heroes are going to be able to sit there and do more damage as their units are all distracted by other things. Let's say they send in their army this way, and these units in this kind of arc here are all going to be doing damage this way towards those troops, and their army is going to get distracted by these things right here. And this archer queen, she's also going to be just right behind this wall and just firing away. She's going to be hacking away at those golems. She's going to be knocking them out. She's going to be hitting on their heroes that are up in that front line. So that's a very good location for her behind that town hall while their troops are distracted with those units. Same thing with the Barb King on this way. While they're sitting here trying to get through these storages in this direction, the Barb King is going to be able to hop this wall and go right here and do damage towards their front ends. Meanwhile, while these things in this area are all sitting there doing damage. So those are really great locations for the heroes. The next thing is the black balloons, the Seeking Air Mines. I have those located right next to the air defenses, and the reason it's important to have these by your air defenses is that when they send it, if they're doing an air attack and they're going to send in a lava hound or even a dragon, and they're going to be targeting those air defenses first to get those out of the way, those air mines do a very large amount of damage, and they're going to hit those high hit point troops and really knock them down while the air defense is also doing damage. So that's a great location for those to be in. I have my red balloons in in pairs, and the reason I like to do them in pairs is because they do splash damage. So if you're getting hit with a mass drag attack or mass loon attack, they're going to hit multiple targets at the same time. So having the double splash damage is really going to hurt a large amount of troops at the same time. I also have them positioned next to these whiz towers because they also do splash damage. So anything in that area that triggers these bombs and near the whiz towers they're going to do a vast amount of damage over a vast amount of troops, and that's really important when you're talking mass balloon raids or even mass drag raids. Now when it comes to our air defense location, it's important to have your air defenses spread in a sense where they have good coverage of the entire map, making sure that they're not all on one side of the map, so they have heavy air defense on one side but not the other. But it's also important to ensure that they're somewhat staggered. So if you were to draw a line between two air defenses, like this, you'll notice that mine are all 1-2 spaces off from each other, and that makes it a lot harder for an air raid to hit two at the same time and take them out. If we were to come in from this direction, they're going to hit this air defense first, it's going to go down, but this one right here is going to stay up, it's going to keep doing damage in that air attack. And even if it's only a matter of a couple seconds, that's still more damage that's being done. So it's quite important and beneficial to have the air defenses staggered and not symmetrically placed in the base. When it comes to your other traps, you have your spring traps as well. When you're talking Town Hall 8 and above, and you have golems and P.E.K.K.A.s and even your heroes that are going to start coming on your front line or through your attack, having spring traps on the outskirts of your base is less beneficial, because if we were to put a spring trap right in this location, this golem's going to come in and they're going to set off that spring trap, but because it's a full golem at that point, it's the beginning of the attack, it's not going to do anything. A golem is not a golem doesn't fly with a spring trap until it's broken into a golemite. However, if you notice I have one right here, once this golem comes into the base, between taking damage from the other defenses, it's potentially going to break into a golemite, and at that point the spring trap might fling one of those golemites out. Otherwise, a wizard might hit it, a witch might hit it, something like that. Have your spring traps more centrally located. Try to find a position where you think that they're going to be hit by golemites, wizards, witches, things like that, that are actually going to be affected by that spring trap. At smaller town halls, 7 and below, for example, we've all done, I'm sure, the technique where you take out one section of wall, and instead you place a spring trap there, and usually we do it right next to a cannon. And what that does is that if you were to place giants down, the giants are sent in, they're lured into that open position, they hit that spring trap, and they all are thrown. And that's the whole point of that technique, and it works very well at those levels. But like I said, at Town Hall 8 and above, when people are starting to incorporate golems into their attack, that's not an effective technique so much anymore. So it's better to have those spring traps in a more central location where they're better used. The other thing is with your small bombs. I have mine in a group of 4 here and a group of 2. Now they do better in groups of 3 to 6, or in a group of 3 to 6, simply because these small bombs don't have a lot of damage individually, but when they're in a bigger group, they do more damage, obviously. A single bomb, especially if you have them on an outer portion of the base, they're going to get hit with, the golems, the P.E.K.K.A.s, the heroes first. Those have higher hit points. Those single bombs individually are not going to do a whole lot of damage. But when you have them more of an internal side, and you have them in groups instead, and let's say they hit a cluster of hogs or some skeletons from a witch or even some wizards, they're more apt to do some damage, especially if other units like a whiz tower, for example, are nearby and doing splash damage as well. So try to have them more centrally located or more internally located, I guess, and have them in groups versus single positions. Okay, so lastly, I want to add one other thing about the air blowers. The air blowers were added, several months ago, and they have made air attacks a lot more difficult, especially at, lower levels even. The air blowers have, or air sweepers, I guess, make even dragon raids a lot harder to plan for and somewhat unpredictable. If you look at my two air blowers, I have one going in this direction roughly to cover those two air defenses, and then I have the other one going out this direction to cover those two air defenses. A lot of times I see, air blowers that are on the outer layer of a base, and sometimes they're blowing in and sometimes they're blowing out, but I have found that when they're more internally located, it takes more time for those troops to get to these air blowers, meaning those are in play longer, and they're blowing those troops off course for a longer period of time. And it's good to try to have your air blower, whether you have one or two, to cover as much of the air defenses as possible. Excuse me. If you have your air blower, let's say, you have it, here. I know it doesn't fit there, but let's say you have it in this kind of an area and you have it facing out this direction. Yes, it's going to be a little bit harder for any troops coming in this way to get through that initially, but really they only have one layer of defenses, one layer of stuff to get through, or I guess two if you count the outskirts, but before they actually hit this and take that out. And they still have a lot of stuff out here that they have to get through. So that's really not a great position when they're too far out of the base or too far on the external sides of the base. But having them more internally located makes it harder because these troops want to get into the center of the bases. They want to get to these air defenses. So the more that they blow over the air defenses and push things away, the better it is for your defense. That's about it for what I have for tips for your base layouts. If you have any questions, feel free to catch me in clan chat. Ask me to take a look at your base. I can give you some ideas of things you can change or what you need to work on, or any other co-leader would be willing to help you out with those questions. Otherwise, you can ask on the Facebook group page or on the website. It's our base defenses are just as important as our offense. The harder it is for the enemy to get stars, the more of a cushion we have when it comes to offense and getting our own stars. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it gives you some helpful advice, and let's get those war bases updated and let's win some wars.